Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today our group will present a study entitled An Analysis of the Problem of Evil between Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd. First, let me briefly explain what the problem of evil means. The problem of evil is a philosophical and theological question that asks how can evil, suffering, and injustice exist in a world created by a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good. Examples of evil include natural disasters, disease, and human suffering. This issue has been discussed by many scholars throughout history, including Muslim thinkers. In this study, we focus on two prominent scholars, namely Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd. The main problem addressed in this study is that although both scholars aim to defend God's perfection, they provide different explanations for the existence of evil. Al-Ghazali explained evil through divine will and hidden wisdom. Meanwhile, Ibn Rushd explained through causality and rational order. This study seeks to critically analyze how Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd address the problem of evil from different theological and philosophical perspectives.
Methodology. This study uses a qualitative research method based on library research. The sources are divided into two primary sources are the religion work of Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd, while secondary sources include book, journal, and thesis. For analysis, this study used descriptive analysis to explain the view of both scholars, and comparative analysis to compare their idea. The purpose of this study is to understand the problem of evil, to link it with Allah's wisdom, justice, and power, and to understand its meaning in human life. Scholar Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali is a famous Islamic scholar who was born in 1058 CE in Iran. He studies many fields such as religion, philosophy, and Sufism. He was a student of Imam al-Juwayni. His career is become a lecturer at the Nizamiya School in Baghdad. Later in his life, he focused more on Sufism as a way to understand God better. His most famous works are Ihya Ulum Ad-Din and Tafahud al-Falasifa. In the topic of evil, Al-Ghazali believed that everything happened by God's will. Humans have limited knowledge, so they cannot fully understand God's plan. What looks like evil may actually have hidden gods. Therefore, evil do not go against God's justice. Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd was born in 1126 CE in Cordoba, Spain. He came from a family of Islamic scholars and later studied philosophy, science, and Islamic law. He works as a judge, qadi, and wrote many books. He is famous for explaining horizontal work and was known as the commentator. His important book is Tafahud al-Tafahud. Ibn Rushd believed that religion and reason work together and do not conflict. In the problem of evil, he said that evil is part of God's natural orders. Everything has a purpose, and what looks bad may help creates balance in the world. Of horizontal and Ibn Rushd. First, Ibn Rushd learned a lot of horizontal. He spent many years studying horizontal's idea and wrote explanation about his teaching. Because of this, he was known as a commentator. Second, horizontal believed that everything happened for a reason, and Ibn Rushd agreed with this idea. He believed that the universe is well ordered and that God created everything with a clear purpose. Next, in understanding evil, Ibn Rushd said that evil is not something that exists on its own. It happens when goodness is missing. Sometimes what looks bad may actually have a good purpose later, and evil is part of the balance in life. Lastly, Aristotle taught the importance of using reason, and Ibn Rushd strongly agreed. He believed that reason is very important in understanding the world, and he also said the reason and religion work together to reach truth.
Next, I will explain Al-Ghazali's view on the problem of evil. Al-Ghazali explains this issue from a theological perspective. He believes that everything that happens in the world, including suffering and evil, happens according to the will of Allah. In Tahaffut al-Falasifah, he rejects the idea of necessary causality. This view is called occasionalism. It means that natural causes do not have their own power because every event is directly created by Allah. For example, people usually think that fire burns cotton by itself, but Al-Ghazali explains that the burning actually happens because Allah created that event at that moment, not because fire has its own power. He also says that human reason is limited in understanding Allah's wisdom. So something that looks like evil to us may actually have a good reason because human reason is limited in understanding divine justice. For example, he compares it to a child receiving painful medical treatment. The child may think it is harmful, but the doctor knows it is for healing. In the same way, suffering may have a purpose that only Allah fully understands. Moving on to Ibn Rushd's view, he gives a more rational and philosophical explanation of the problem of evil based on logic and nature. In Tahaffut at-Tahaffut, Ibn Rushd strongly supports the principle of causality, and he also criticized Al-Ghazali's rejection of cause and effect. He argues that if causality does not exist, then human knowledge and science would not be possible. This is because we understand the world through consistent cause and effect in nature. For Ibn Rushd, natural laws are not separate from God. Instead, they are the way God organizes the universe in a stable and consistent order. That is why the world can be understood through human reason. He also believes that human reason is reliable when we use it properly, especially through logical thinking or demonstrative reasoning called burhan. He adds that religion and philosophy do not really conflict because both come from truth, and the truth cannot contradict itself. Regarding evil, Ibn Rushd explains that evil does not exist on its own. It is only the absence or lack of good. For example, blindness is not a real thing by itself, but simply the absence of sight. In the same way, suffering and imperfection happen because created beings are not perfect. He also says that these imperfections are part of the natural order and help create balance in the world. A world with different levels of perfections and imperfections is needed for harmony in creation. He also says that these imperfections are part of the natural order and help create balance in the world. A world with different levels of perfection and imperfection is needed for harmony in creation. Through this orderly universe, we can see that divine justice and wisdom are clearly reflected in nature. So here we can see the comparative perspectives of both scholars. Despite their differences, Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd share some important similarities. First, both scholars defend the perfections of Allah and reject the idea that the existence of evil proves that God is unjust or imperfect. Second, both believe that evil has a purpose. However, they explain that purpose differently according to their respective intellectual frameworks. So, for the differences, regarding the nature of evil, Al-Ghazali views evil as part of God's hidden wisdom and divine plan, while Ibn Rushd sees evil to be a privation of good, meaning that a lack of perfections within created things. In terms of causality, Al-Ghazali rejects necessary causality through his theory of occasionalism. Meanwhile, Ibn Rushd strongly supports natural causality and argues that the world functions through consistent cause and effect relationships. Regarding human reason, Al-Ghazali emphasizes its limitation in understanding divine wisdom, while Ibn Rushd believes that reason can help humans understand the order and wisdom of creations. Finally, Al-Ghazali argues that divine justice goes beyond human judgment and understanding. In contrast, Ibn Rushd maintains that divine wisdom and justice can be understood through the rational structure of the universe. To conclude, both scholars sought to defend the perfections and wisdom of Allah in response to the problem of evil. However, Al-Ghazali focuses on divine power and the limitations of human understanding, while Ibn Rushd emphasizes reason, natural causality, and the orderly nature of creation. Next, I will discuss the different perspectives of Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd on the problem of evil. First, according to Al-Ghazali, who represents Ash'ari theology, good and evil are determined entirely by God's will, not by human reasoning. He introduced the concept of occasionalism, which means that natural objects do not have their own causal power. Instead, God directly causes every event that happens in the universe. Therefore, suffering and evil should not be seen as signs of injustice. Rather, they are part of God's wisdom and divine plan, even if human beings cannot fully understand the reasons behind them. On the other hand, Ibn Rushd presents a different view based on Aristotelian philosophy. He argues that good and evil have an objective reality that humans can understand through reason. Unlike Al-Ghazali, Ibn Rushd rejects occasionalism and supports the idea of secondary causality. This means that God created the universe with stable natural laws, allowing natural processes to operate consistently. From this perspective, suffering is not directly caused by God. Instead, it results from the limitations of the material world and the normal operation of nature. Although evil exists, Ibn Rushd believes it is only a small part of the universe, and the overall goodness and order of creation are much greater than its imperfections. In summary, Al-Ghazali emphasizes God's absolute will and hidden wisdom, while Ibn Rushd highlights human reason and the role of natural laws in explaining suffering and evil.
To conclude our presentation, the debate between Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd isn't about right or wrong. It is about two deeply religious paths trying to protect the exact same truth, which is the perfection of God. Al-Ghazali prioritized divine sovereignty by arguing that God directly causes every event. He gives great spiritual comfort to believers. In his view, suffering is never random. It is a purposeful, personalized test from a creator whose grand design is simply beyond human logic. On the other hand, Ibn Rushd prioritized cosmic order. He argues that God creates stable natural laws and that physical suffering is not directly willed by God, but is simply an unavoidable byproduct of living in an imperfect material world. As a group, we see strengths and limits in both. We agree with Al-Ghazali that trials build spiritual resilience, but his view can be criticized for undermining scientific inquiry. Conversely, we agree with Ibn Rushd that natural laws are essential for science, but his philosophical view faces criticism for being emotionally cold to those who are hurting. Ultimately, they prove to us that the mystery of human suffering can be answered through both the humility of faith and the clarity of reason.
For future research, there are three suggestions. First, researchers can compare Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd with philosophers from other religious traditions, such as Thomas Aquinas and William of Ockham, to understand different views on God, reason, and evil. Second, these ideas can be applied to modern issues like natural disasters and climate change to examine whether people experience suffering through spiritual beliefs or scientific causes. Finally, future studies can explore how later Islamic thinkers such as the Illuminationist school and Mullah Sadra combine spiritual and rational approaches to explain human suffering. Overall, this debate remains relevant and can help us better understand the relationship between faith, reason, and the problem of evil. That's all from us. Thank you.